Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, part 3 of our ukulele build. Well, you saw there in part 1, it was a total disaster. Part 2, we managed to pick up the pieces and carry on, sort of saving the project by making our shop-built thickness sander. And we're going to start off today's show by taking those pieces of mahogany that we nearly destroyed in show 1, and we're going to sand them down to their final thickness. I'm also going to pump up the CFM of that dust collection that I put on top by hooking it up to my 4-inch port dust collection. And with that, we have managed to salvage the 2 pieces that we thought were garbage from part 1 of this series. And I can't tell you how impressed I am with the shop-built thickness sander. Absolutely amazing. Did a great job, and as long as you take your time building one, you should be getting the same results as what I'm getting here. I will tell you though, even with the pumped up CFM of the 4-inch port and the dust collection unit, I'm still not really impressed with the dust collection on this, and we'll probably be seeing a build video coming after this series for maybe a dust shroud for that unit, just to increase our dust collection. But with that now, we're going to cut these down to a more usable size, a little closer to what we need for our front sound panel and our back panel. And there they are, the 2 panels that were considered to be scrap pretty much at the end of show 1 have now been salvaged, and I'm very pleased about that. I'm pretty sure you guys already got that gist. Before we get into making the bending mold out of the 3/4 MDF, what I'm going to do is I need to prepare the stock for the sides that will be bent. And for that, we're going to need some pieces 2.5 inches wide. You only really need about 14-15 inches long, but I'm going to go 18 because I want to give me some wiggle room, and it's going to be that same 5/64 of an inch thick, or 2 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is head over to the bandsaw. I'm going to resaw some of that 3/16 inch stock again, and once I get it resawn, I'm going to take it back over to that drum sander. First though, I'm going to cut it on the table saw to our width, and then I'm going to sand those strips down to their final dimension. One thing I like to point out, if you've never bent wood before, done some steam bending. It was somewhat successful years ago. But if you've never bent wood before, make some extra pieces, because I promise you, you're going to break some. And there we go. I've milled out 6 of them actually. And am I expecting some breakage? Most definitely. It's inevitable, I believe, at this point, that I'm going to break a couple of those while getting the feel of bending that wood. But now that we've got all of our stock for the front and back panels and the sides of the ukulele done, we need to think about a bending form. And that will be once the wood is bent. This is the form that the ukulele gets clamped into in order to allow it to dry and take on its final shape. And for that, we're going to need some squares of MDF. So I'm going to grab some 3/4 MDF and cut them to the size that we need. So as I said, in order to make the form or the mold for this ukulele, we need 3/4 MDF. So we're going to need 8 pieces of it, and each one of those pieces will be 3/4 inches thick. It will be 11 inches long and 5 inches wide. Well, we have our 8 pieces of 3/4 MDF cut to the proper dimension, and like I said, that's 5 inches by 11 inches. And we just want to take one of these pieces for now. And I've got a pattern here for a soprano ukulele, which happens to be what we're making. And I have cut this pattern completely in half. And it's imperative that you're accurate on that cut. And what we need to do is transfer this pattern to our MDF. I'm going to be using spray adhesive to adhere this pattern. But once we get that pattern adhered, being sure to line up this center mark with the edge of the board, then we're going to take it over to the scroll saw, cut out this profile, but just to the outside of the line, and then we're going to go over to the oscillating sander and clean up all of the edges. This template is going to be the basis for everything that happens here with the shaping of the body. So be as accurate as you possibly can to get this one particular board to be the exact shape that you want, because everything that you do here will be transferred to subsequent pieces and to the bending of the sides of your instrument. I just want to remind you here that you are at this point in time making a piece for this project that will govern the quality of your instrument from here to the end, being the mold. So first things first, before you start sanding this form up to the line, check to make sure that sanding drum is actually square to your table. If it's not, you better start making some adjustments before you even turn the machine on. Once you're set that and happy that this is square, you can go ahead and sand that entire half form up to the line. Well, this is now the master template of our entire bending jig. And what you want to do at this point in time is line up your edges on this piece that you've just sanded to another. Double check it, make sure it's all good all the way around. And once you're happy with it, that it's where it should be, trace your outline of your half ukulele. Can you see that there? Once you get this pattern traced on all of your pieces, then you want to go back over to the scroll saw and cut just inside the line here and take away the majority of this waste. We have all of our other pieces for our molds cut, and like I said, just outside of the line. And now we need to take our original template, line it up to one of the pieces here, and once we get it lined up along the straight edges and you're content with how they're lined up, because you really want these to be perfectly aligned, but once you're happy with it, I have a couple of 1/16 inch holes drilled in the waist areas here, and that is for the purpose of putting a little 1-inch nail. And once I get these lined up, I will drive these 1-inch nails home so that they will hold these two pieces together. Before I do that though, I'm going to go get a man's hammer. Really don't know what I was thinking about with that little tack hammer, but it sure as heck isn't going to do the job. Okay, so I'm happy with that there. That's all lined up, and we're just going to drive these nails home. There's one, and just before we drive the other one in, we'll just double check that everything is lined up and drive it home. Now that we have that done and these two pieces are joined together, we're going to head over to the router table. We're over here at the router table. What we have is a 3/4 diameter pattern bit, or a flush trim, or a flush cut, or whatever you want to call these bits. There's 3 or 4 different names for them. But basically what it is a bearing guided bit. This one has a bearing top and bottom, which really makes it very versatile. But it's a bearing guided bit where the cutting edges coincide with the outside diameter of the bearing. So as you run it along your pattern, in this case it will run along our original pattern here at the bottom, the cutting edge will duplicate exactly what the bearing sees down along this bottom half. And with that in place, what we're going to do now is cut all of these pieces to the exact same size as the original. Dust collection is a must here, guys. And with that, we've got all 8 pieces, all of them identical. The pattern or flush trim bit really makes short work of that and ensures that every single piece is exactly like the one before it, as long as you use the same piece here to run your bearing on. And this is what I mean by make sure when you're lining these up that everything is right on the money when you first cut that first template piece, because that is the basis that everything else is judged on for your shape of your instrument. And what we have there is a beautiful half and half form of our ukulele. This whole form is going to come in handy later on, and what we want to do at this point in time now is each one of these halves, we want to put a little bit of glue in between each layer and nail each layer together so that it becomes one solid form. And with that, we have our 2 forms. They look great, everything lines up beautifully, and of course 2 separate pieces here. As we shape the sides, we will be using some clamping to get them held in here until they dry to hold their final form. And then once they're trimmed and they become a body of a ukulele, of course, we will use these 2 forms clamped together to help aid us in the final shape of our instrument, as well as holding it in that shape while reinforcing is installed, etc., etc. But take your time on this form, guys. It's very important to have it as perfect as you possibly can. Little small variations may not hurt you. I do have some tiny little variations in mind, but it's a learning curve. And that'll be all she wrote for this week and part 3 of our build. Some great progress made today with all of the stock finally thickness to the 5/64 or 2 mils that we needed. Some really great progress with our forms being made so that we can get those bends done. Hopefully we're going to get into that a little next week. Again, the sides were all cut and thicknessed. So really with this week's show, although it seems like the build is going slowly, there is a lot of work that needs to be done, and we are making progress, and that's a good thing. So that'll be it for this week. Looking forward to next week with part 4. But for now, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I'm going to see you again next week with yet another woodworking video.